you're going to predict into the next 5 years, so obviously, where who do you think will be the main winners? Do you think Bromcom are going to continue to grow at the rate they're doing? Do you think Arbor will? Do you think one of them is actually going to start growing quicker? So Arbor have obviously got to the point where they're now one of the fastest growers. So is that going to just continue at that pace, or do you see?
Yeah. So I hope this isn't a cop-out answer, but I've done more talking about Arbor and Scholarpack, so I feel the need to start this with Bromcom. I think those three organizations have done enough in terms of their growth and their market capture, in terms of specific subsectors in the last probably 5 years, to make me believe that all three of them stand a really good chance of being really strong players in the future. And I think actually the full featureiness of Bromcom is definitely a strength. It has a very broad feature set for a cloud MIS. I would assume it's the fullest feature cloud MIS. I don't know. Maybe Cloud School might be in that discussion as well, and I think Arbor is no doubt catching up. But that would be my instinct. And so I think we need to consider all of those three. I find it quite hard to distinguish between those three. And given that the data doesn't distinguish between them, if you consider Bromcom also has growth by pupils, I'm not going to be the one to do so. Where the data goes, I follow. So I see a bright future for all three of those organizations. I actually think the one that's more of a wild card is Pupil Asset. Their growth has leveled off a little bit in the last year in the data, having actually, like I say, surprised some people by their growth in previous years, because they were less talked about, but they had some real success, in previous years, and they've just been through an acquisition themselves. And therefore, the question is, do their new owners do a good job of giving them a good position in the market? Now, maybe we should come back and have a discussion about that once you've spoken to Graham. But I think they have smart people in that organization. And I think they definitely have a shot at being a fourth organization in that field. I just mentioned two others for the sake of sort of transparency and sort of trying to be fair to all. One is Phoronix, who still only have one school in my data set, but they're a chunky Canadian company with money and resources, and a team here that have a growth strategy that, I blogged about this recently, but that revolves around special needs schools. And I'll be interested to see how well that takes off. And if it does, you could see them getting some market share. I would talk about Go for Schools, who honestly I need to find out more about how their move into MIS world is going. But they've had a popular several hundred schools, as I understand it, market share using their assessment and other tools. I think they've had more and more modules added as they've grown as an organization. And I think what Pupil Asset showed at primary is, if somebody likes your assessment product, Pupil Asset has a primary tracker, actually you got quite a good job of getting them to buy your MIS. Now that's worked at primary. Nobody's done it that way around at secondary, but I'm interested to know how that goes, and I wish them well, and I could see some strength in there. So I'd want to mention those two. There are two organizations I haven't yet mentioned, and that's RM Integris and Advanced, both of whom have still a significant stake in the UK market. Integris, I think, somewhat unfairly sometimes is overlooked, because they are the second largest MIS vendor with almost 2,000 schools. I think they have a shot at maintaining or even growing that position. The reason why I didn't start with them is they haven't really grown their position since I've been looking at the market. Small movements here or there. They haven't really lost a ton of market share as well. So what should you infer from that? Well, schools that use them presumably are pretty happy, because there's not been that much churn, and they have some local authority contracts, which no doubt help. But one way or another, it feels like they have to tighten their segmentation and sort of look a little bit more at who would definitely choose them. Because if you told me, but who's going to choose Integris over everything else? For whom does it stand out? I struggle to answer that, whereas I could give that answer perhaps for the other three fast growers. But they've got that market share, and they have what you would assume has to be a strong product from that. And so I think they should be in the conversation. Advanced is the hardest one to talk about, because their market share has shrunk so profoundly over the last 6 or 7 years. But it's happened probably in large part because of decisions made by the previous owners. Many of us watched the market for a long time know this, but for those that haven't, the piece of software facility CMIS, which was the legacy old MIS, was previously owned by a company called Serco, who announced that it was going end of life. And in announcing that it was going end of life, told its customers they should move to a new product called Progresso, which I think it's charitable to say wasn't quite ready for that transition at the time. And therefore schools just moved away from it en masse over a period of a few years, to Sims and others, but a lot back to Sims. Now they have this product, Cloud School, which is the next generation, I guess, of Progresso, and probably sensible to change the branding of it. And it's got a lot of positives about it, and it's pretty full feature. But they have struggled as an organization, again, with the segmentation of positioning. But unlike RM, who have managed successfully to keep a decent market share, having lost theirs, it's just desperate hard to turn that around. So I wish them well, and I think they deserve a look to anyone looking at MIS, just as Integris and the others that I've mentioned do. But I guess I won't be in a position to say I'm excited about their market share over the next 5 years until I see some sense that number is turning around, and it just haven't yet. So, it's the top three: Bromcom, Scholarpack, Arbor. It's Pupil Asset with the best claim to be in that category of those that might push on because they've done some decent growth already and because they've got good backing behind them. But there are another 4 or so to watch, and I wouldn't discount another entrant into the market, an international MIS looking to come to the UK as well, by the way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there is a lot of interest now internationally at even at Sims itself. People looking internationally from abroad, looking at if they should buy or not. So I think it will open up the market more. I think people will be far more interested. The days of the Aspens, trying to come into the market and failing quite miserably, really, if I'm being honest. I think that sort of thing is over. I think if anyone wants to come into the market, I think they'll be more encouraged by the success of other products now.
I think that's right. Also, I don't know. I don't think this has been. I think part of what happened with Aspen was the company corporately had other better opportunities to throw resources at, frankly, at the time. So I don't think their retreat from the UK was necessarily just about a failure to gain traction within this market. It was also about a tactical sort of set of opportunities elsewhere that they wanted to tackle. Maybe I've just been maybe I believe people's perspectives on things too much, but I think I've heard some things that make me somewhat credulous of that approach on it. And I think I would see it from a different angle, which is all of the data shows is it's incredibly hard to have an MIS that is successful in multiple territories. There are UK MIS that sell internationally, but that's almost all to British international schools or private schools. And that's not really a different market. It's just a different, it's an overseas version of the independent market. Yeah. I don't think we should do that the same. I did a blog not that long ago about US MIS vendors, or SIS vendors, they call them there, which I think is a better name, by the way, school information systems. Not least because MIS, or management information systems, in the UK have often been really bad at handling management information. So, I think SIS is a better name for the system. But the thing that strikes you when you look at it is you don't know the names of any of them, with the possible exception of PowerSchool, which some people know because it's the biggie. It is the largest global SIS, and the one that can stake a claim to legitimately having a business in multiple territories, to my knowledge. You may have a little bit of overlap then with Australia and other markets. North America works together, so there are some that sort of straddle Canada and the US. But basically, SIS don't really sell across country lines. I think what's going to be very interesting in the next few years is, as you say, first of all, is Sims bought by somebody who owns an SIS elsewhere, or do they choose to buy up other SIS and make more of a global PowerSchool type model? Or, is there actually room for more expansion between countries and for an Australian SIS or an American SIS to have another crack at the UK because of the interest, as you've said, that's been shown to Sims? Maybe that just makes it a hot topic again. Yeah. And I could see that being more likely now than before. There are powerful reasons why it's hard, but I just think that, with a cloud world, that becomes a bit more likely than it was maybe when Aspet and Follett were trying.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, whichever way, you have to have a cloud strategy before you think, I think, internationally.
I think trading on the reputation of British schools internationally is a strategy that plenty of UK edtech businesses have sort of mined successfully.
Oh.
It's just not the same as having an MIS in the UK and Belgium or Australia or New Zealand. It's a very different thing. And the dynamics of procurement are so different in different countries that you've got to work out a product market fit question, and you've got to work out a whole new sales question. I think that is something that when I speak to people who are outside of the UK and they're coming into the UK or looking at it, and you explain to them that you might have to pick off like 50 people primary, one by one, rather than selling to a school district in the US, or maybe having a statewide strategy in Australia, you sometimes get some open mouths at that point.
Yeah, no, I agree.